Hey everybody, and welcome to another grad student book review where we take an academic work and we dissect its thesis and main arguments in 5 minutes or less. All right, today we're looking at Before European Hegemony, the World System from 1250 to 1350 AD by Janet Abu-Lughod. Hope I said her name right. If you're watching, I'm sorry if I screwed it up. All right, so basically, this book is all about pre-rise of the West, right? All right, and really clearly stated, her thesis is that there was no inherent historical necessity that shifted the system in favor of the West rather than the East. Really, she contends that the 13th and 14th century was the crux of the historical turning point in the classic rise of the West scenario, which is a counter to the traditional argument that says that the 16th century in Europe was the turning point in Western hegemony. She argues that Asia and the Middle East were clearly superior in all economic, technological, political realms during the 13th and 14th century. And really, what she's trying to say is that different regions develop at different speeds during different time periods, which seems fairly common sense, but it's a fairly unique work in the world history realm because you don't see it a whole lot, which makes her work stand out quite a bit. And it's pretty good. So really, she says that there was a productive, interconnected economic trade system that was as robust, if not even more so, than the European economies in the 16th century. So these 13th and 14th century trading systems are really centered in Asia, the Middle East, and India. And they kind of revolved around this interconnected system of trade, where instead of one single hegemony, you have three that all kind of depended on each other, which is a contrast to the European one, where it's just one. It was just Europe. Really, what she says is what kind of ended it was the plague, essentially. Once the plague hit, the trade routes kind of stopped because they didn't want to spread the disease, and that these three major hegemonies kind of retreated inward. The Middle East, India, and Asia were so vast that they could look inward to gain all their kind of economic power and kind of use that to survive. Whereas Europe, particularly England, could not. They had to expand even during the Black Death to survive. So that's kind of the heart of her book, and it's a convincing argument that Asia, the Middle East, and India were very prominent from 1250 to 1350, and it makes sense that the Black Death, that the plague, changed all that. So I do think that her thesis stands, and I think her main arguments are good. One of the critiques I do have is that she kind of neglects the military history aspect of it. She neglects kind of Jeremy Black and Jeffrey Parker's theories about the exportation of European violence and kind of the gunpowder revolution and the military revolution in Europe. She doesn't really talk about that aspect as much. And so I think by leaving the military element out of it, she opens herself for some kind of critique. But really, other than that, I think her work stands on its own. Essentially, at the base level, it's a counter-argument to the traditional rise of the West, Eurocentric view of history that is so profound in academia today. Right? It's starting to move towards world history more, but her argument really points out that counter-argument to the traditional European hegemony, right? Specifically starting in the 15th century. And then she provides evidence, lots of evidence, that says that there was a robust cultural and economic and political center outside of Europe prior to the 15th, 16th century, right? She says that civilizations reorganize rather than implode, right? And I think that's a critical part here, is that that civilizations, they don't just stop. They reorganize and they kind of maneuver, if you will, into a different world system. And I think that's the crux of the argument, and that's what can be taken out of this book. So if you're looking at comps, if you're looking for any kind of world history scenario, this is a must-read. She is a heavy hitter here, and so I highly recommend it. As always, if you agree with me, Leave some comments. If you don't agree with me, leave some comments. And as always, subscribe. Talk to you later.